So hello, everyone. So my name's Eric Ryan, and I've got my business partner here, Ricky Chilcott. Both of us are the co-founders of Mission Met. And this is really exciting to have Laura Andersen here, who is a partner in LeadingX2. And what she is an expert at, as I've gotten to know Laura over the last couple of months, and is exactly what her business's name is about, LeadingX2, how two people can collaborate and work together more effectively to lead a business, an organization, some sort of venture. And at Mission Met, as you may know, we are all about helping organizations succeed at strategic planning. And one of the key things that we have learned is that a lot of times strategic planning works much more effectively when you have two people leading it. And so connecting with Laura in this realm was fantastic. So great to have you here, Laura. And I'd love, we want to, some thoughts and questions for you. Maybe there's some great ideas you can share with our Mission Met audience about this leading. So welcome to you.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here.
If you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about, your role at LeadingX2, your job, and what you specialize at.
So I joined with Dan Mulhern about 2 years ago to do LeadingX2, and the impetus for it was, call me a millennial, but I've always really enjoyed working with people who view me as an equal partner. No matter where we are on the org chart, I have a very, a strong instinct around the fact that we need everyone's unique contributions. And so when I spoke with Dan about my philosophy of leadership around that and his, it just became very apparent very quickly that we were aligned. And I found someone who has 3 decades of work experience on me, who was going to treat me as an equal partner. And I thought, wow, that is special and rare, and I cannot say no to this. So here I am working with him. And one of the elements of our work is working with key pairs in organizations. And oftentimes people want to know, who is that pair? Is it the CEO and is it the CFO, or is it the COO? And there's no right answer. The key pair can be the highest executive and their closest administrative assistant, or somebody who's on the front line who they're mentoring through a formal mentorship program, because that person actually gives them insights into what's truly happening in a customer-facing role. So it doesn't necessarily need to be any particular position on the org chart. It just needs to be two people who work together closely, and their collaboration is important to getting outcomes to come to life. So in that sense, we really believe that awareness creates choice. And half of what we do around our coaching is self-awareness, right? Figuring out where folks are in their own understanding of themselves, their strengths. And then we move on to, okay, what about you as a pair? Who are you as a pair? What are your strengths? And then through that awareness, suddenly we have choice. How do we want to readjust how we allocate our roles and responsibilities? Or where do our powers combined fall short for something that's really needed? Who else do we need to think about bringing in a more serious and formalized way? And so it's taking that time to truly digest and identify us as individuals and us together as a team, and then go, all right, so now that we're aware of our dynamic and we've had some conversations to clarify or improve or whatever their short-term goal might be in the partnership, there's also this newfound awareness that creates long-term choice in terms of the way that you present to your organization and outsiders in order to bring your vision and mission to life, is usually what the people we work with are all about. It's, where is our partnership doing what it needs to do to bring the vision and mission to life of our organization, and where do we have room to grow?
Yeah, that's great, Eric. That sort of reminds me of, in our strategic planning assessment model, part of the assessment is knowing where you are right now, but then also where maybe the organization wants to be, and then that plan. And it sounds like Laura and Dan, you work with work with these key pairs to help them develop a plan to help get that organization there through their partnership and better communication and work styles and those kinds of things. So that's really cool. I know that Dan has done a lot of research on co-leadership, but do you have any sort of high-level takeaways from, like, what does the research say about why pairs are better than just you know, a single person operating on their own.
Yeah, the more in-depth answer would be that we all have unique individual strengths, but even the best leaders are still a single human, right? And so we often see the leader on the cover. My favorite example from watching Inside Bill Gates' Mind this was a series on Netflix, was everybody looks at Bill as if he's this incredible leader, and he is. Plus, he named on that series his key partnerships. Like, I would not have been able to have the impact through the Gates Foundation I've had without Warren Buffett being alongside the way, trusting, adding in many ways to make this work. I couldn't have done the work of raising my family without his now ex-wife, or started the foundation to be what it was without her. That was a key pair for him. And also in creating Microsoft, that he always had, you know, a Steve. He had Steve's along the way working alongside him to clarify roles or to create other technical ads. So in many ways, he's viewed as the solo operator, and he does have incredible strengths. And inevitably, we're all one person. We have our limitations. And so having an effective pair, somebody who complements you and is either bringing additive or ideally multiplying your value, because your collaboration is so effective that the sum is greater than, or the total is greater than the sum of its parts. That's when you start to see so much opportunity to, going back to the vision and mission, to create the world you want to create, to deliver what you say you will in the way you say you will. You have somebody alongside you, refining it with you, shaping it, making it better, holding you to what you said you would do and how. So that additional perspective to both complement in terms of talents and strengths and gifts is also often can be a really compassionate accountability buddy, somebody who similarly, in a very kind way, knows enough about who you are and what you're trying to do to hold you to it, and vice versa. So yeah, I mean, the benefits are tremendous. And where the pair is not effective, unfortunately, there's too many examples of that as well, where the pair is not effective, it can be really detrimental. So we view the benefits of having a highly effective pair is so great that it's worth investing in that awareness at the beginning of the relationship, deep communication that we don't often take time for, to multiply the potential outcomes. And we strongly encourage people who are in those key pairs to, either with somebody's support or on their own, to take that time to gain that awareness, where otherwise when you're operating alone and not so closely with someone, you might not need to tread as carefully or as consciously, but that close relationship makes that more important.
No, the name of the business is Leading by Two. But the words that you're sharing right now are like, you know, the pairing. And so it's not necessarily about leadership per se, as much as effective pairs. Is that sort of an evolution of like the approach? Did it start out as really kind of thinking about co-CEO, et cetera, and then has evolved? Or has that kind of been just the way it's been, you know, the whole time, thinking of effective pairing?
Yeah, great question. I would say it includes, but isn't limited to, people who are leaders by their title. And so we really talk about leading by two in terms of, I'm leading myself, but I'm also leading you. And you're leading yourself, but you're also leading me. So title doesn't necessarily matter in that dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate to that, Ricky.
Yeah, for sure.
And if I lose sight of the vision and mission, you lead me back to it because we share it. Or if I lose sight of the goal that we said we were accomplishing, again, you lead me back to it because we share it. And so the key of that pair of leaders is that we have these things that we've articulated that sit between us. So when either one of us gets off course, or ideally as a duo as well, when we get off course, other people know what to lead us back to. So it's not just leading limited to our one-on-one interaction, but it's that having those shared and articulated aspirations and having this open dialogue democratizes leadership in the sense that we can always all redirect and re-guide and lift the team or lift one another and back to what we said we were even here to do.
That phrase of democratizing leadership is a nice segue into another question that we have for you. So as you know, Mission Met, we work specifically with nonprofits and to a certain degree some other nonprofit-like organizations, but it's a nonprofit spirit, mission-driven organizations. And I know you've done plenty of work in the nonprofit space yourself, Laura. The concept of co-leadership or the paired leadership piece. Do you feel like the nonprofit space is is different than the for-profit space in its approach, or is there a differentiation in your mind about how co-leadership, for lack of a better term, can be approached or utilized in the nonprofit space versus other sectors? I'm just curious if you see any nuance there, or is the ground more fertile in that way, kind of like the democratization concept? I'm just curious what your insight would be on that.
Is the ground more fertile? That's interesting. You know, my instinct is to say sometimes. I feel like I'm giving you so many answers of it depends. Can you tell I'm a consultant? And the reason I say that is the similar power dynamics can appear no matter what your business model is and what you do with your profit, whether it goes to others or gets reinvested. So at the end of the day, this is about communication. This is about clarity of personal values. This is about self-awareness, and that inherently improves work in any sector. I will say specific to nonprofits, we often see lofty, amazing visions and a wide variety of understanding of the mission within it. Some people are out there trying to do everything needed to bring that vision to life. And what can be helpful with a key pair is recognizing I'm a piece of the pie and it's not all on my shoulders to make this vision a reality. So that learning how to leverage someone with complementary strengths can be a microcosm. It teaches in a relationship the courage to contribute everything I have and the humility to recognize where I really need someone else's contributions. That can translate out on an organizational level in the nonprofit sector to, okay, we have this amazing, gorgeous vision. It's huge. This is what we're adding. And then here's where we trust and know that others are adding. So kind of the spirit of collaboration tends to carry out that way, specifically with nonprofits. And in terms of values, I would say that when we talk to most folks in nonprofit work, how they want to be along the way, which is how we talk about values, really matters to them. They have a way they're trying to move through the world. They have results in mind, but the end doesn't necessarily justify the means. Like they really care about treating people a certain way to get there. And so norming on that and what does respect look like to you? What is compassion to you? Like taking the time with people who are so deeply committed to the way they move through the world, being authentic and true to that. Extra communication there we find is really valuable. And I'm sure there's a lot of for-profit organizations, private sector organizations out there where that's true too. But I would say, you know, the nonprofit sector skews so purposeful and in their personal movement through the world and the organizational aspirations that means that's often a very dialed up conversation.
Yeah, as you've been talking, I've been thinking that certainly I think in the business or the corporate world, there has over the past 10, 15, 20 years been a bit more of a mission orientation. You know, I don't know if that's, you know, societal changes that, you know, millennials and Gen Zs, you know, care more about the mission. And so, you know, those businesses have had to shift to try and not just be about, you know, what the ROI is and profit motive and that sort of thing. But in the business space, it does feel like it's a little bit easier to orient people around the common goal of make more money, right? Like it is sort of like self-directing in some way, shape, or form. But in the nonprofit space, you know, like you're saying, that because like at the very heart, they have this mission and a purpose. And because they tend to not be able to, pay as well, and have some of those challenges that you have to find other ways to motivate people. And in the context of a partnership, the executive director and the board chair, or the executive director and a key staff member, there is, I think, a little bit of at times when you get tired, COVID, for sure, I'm sure as folks that, but like, you just need to put out fires. You need to like get more revenue, and it's a little bit easier for those softer skills, those emotional things, really driving towards the mission. That kind of, there's a like kind of not like a push away from that, but there's kind of a pulling towards the nitty gritty of the organization and just making it run and operate. And so it seems to me that partnership can be really, really valuable because when one is weak, maybe the other is strong and can kind of pull them back to the mission. So do you find that to be true, or like kind of resonating for what you've seen with leaders?
Oh yeah, just that the nature of being human is that so much is cyclical, and that can include our energy, our inspiration, our focus. And when you have a tight partnership and people are moving through whatever they're moving through on a personal level, like you said, has been hugely variant in the last year and a half. That having that key pair and like the articulated aspirations that sit between the two of you, so that even when both of you are thrown off, are not feeling very strong, others also know this is what these two said they were about. Let us bring them back to that. That there's tremendous power in creating that shared platform. And there's also a lot to be said for getting very comfortable and good at articulating your strengths and where the other person is excellent and you're not, especially for if we're talking about toward the top of the org chart. If I'm the external facing fundraiser, I get so much external validation and quantifiable internal validation. Here's the funds that I brought in for us. And then that person who's in the operational nitty gritty you were describing, maybe we do employee surveys, and so maybe we know that our employees are happy because they're running things well, but maybe it's harder to quantify my contribution, or it's less visible to the outside world. And so making sure that both people are very excellent at celebrating one another's roles and contributions, whether the external world validates them or not, that also opens up a lot of room in your own organization for people who are doing the nitty gritty role, the people doing the more often important and urgent feeling work, which tends to be the facing beneficiaries, right? So that everybody within the organization also sees that role modeling of all contributions are celebrated and celebrated well here, including, that can include me. So it can also have this cultural repercussion impact on the rest of your team and identifying how critical each of their strengths are to the success of the organization. You don't just have to bring in money or deliver on the grant proposal to be a really important member of this team. There are ways here that we internally understand every single person matters. So it can have a lot of, I don't really like the phrase trickle down effects, but it can have a lot of secondhand or ripple effects culturally in terms of validating a variety of skill sets and strengths.
What you're saying makes me think about our particular work with strategic planning. So what we have found, and I shared this with you and we've talked before, is what we found is, well, I'll just back up even further. Strategic planning is the type of activity that the biggest challenge that most of the organizations and nonprofits we've worked with over the years struggle with is actually executing, following through, implementing it, and so on, and building this process, a muscle around it. That's creating a plan is one thing, but the follow through. And one of the tricks, key tricks, quote unquote, that we have found that works really well is this what we call co-champion model. Same thing that you're an expert at here, Laura, around the leadership and the pairing and everything. And two people that everyone in the organization knows that we can look to champion our overall strategic planning process at our organization. And I'd love for you to, offer some insights on why that might be working. And I will say, that oftentimes the best, what we see work really well is when the executive director partners with an administrative assistant of some sort or someone more operational, and the executive director carries the energy of the overall influence and the overall, like leadership of it. And then the administrative assistant, carries the follow through. So is that sort of like, that, and the roles are really clear and they both really value and appreciate what each person's bringing to the table. Do you see that sort of, model, is that a common way that people succeed in their pairing and their co-leadership? I'm just curious what your take is on that, Laura.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, titles aside, what you're describing are two really complementary skill sets. One person who's good at maybe like the more verbal communications, the face stuff. There's skill sets that tend to be stereotypically attributes of maybe an executive director or a CEO, someone who has to be very persuasive and public facing and inspirational. And then there's this complementary skill set of the vision is beautiful, but we don't just speak about it here. We need to get it done. And so while you're out talking about it, I'm going to make sure it really comes to life over here, right? So oftentimes that can fall into the bucket of someone such as an executive director and an administrative assistant. But what it really boils down to is what are those two types of folks are bringing unique gifts and
Right.
are together, their powers combined are giving the strategic plan some life and some, in that case, authority. Executive director does have some positional power, right, in order to make sure that something gets done. And the executive assistant can bring the lens of details and execution and breaking things down. And this is a lovely vision, but what does it mean to everybody else in our organization? What does it mean for them at work tomorrow? How does it change 10 a.m. on Tuesday for them? And so the person who has that mind, that skill set to really break it down into how it will impact directly the rest of the organization is what you're describing. And yeah, that can fit at different places, how we tend to hire and allocate responsibilities. That's a really great example of a pair that tend to have very complementary skill sets and strengths. I love that you've already seen that taking place in so many organizations. And I'm particularly encouraged to hear always of people who do have a lot of positional power who fully acknowledge and embrace that, like, this person who may not have the positional power on the org chart that they do is indispensable and such a necessary key presence and ingredient to the success of the organization. I think that is one of the leadership attributes that I admire most. So I'm greatly encouraged to hear that your clients already bring it.
It's happening more and more, and I think partially because of our prodding. We just see it is sort of a secret sauce place that I've seen in the organization we work with when you have that sort of dynamic to actually make strategic planning happen. I can give you case study upon case study around that. So
yeah, it definitely, it goes back to that phrase, awareness creates choice. The executive director is aware of a certain amount of ways that this strategic plan needs to be carried out in the organization, and the administrative assistant is aware of this entire other set of things to look out for, threats to its execution, opportunities to build it in. And so bringing that together, they just have so many more options of how to carry the plan forward and can figure out what's the best one, what's the stickiest here. So I can see how they're finding more success, and I'm, like I said, encouraged too to hear that you all are prodding them in that direction.
Yeah, very cool.
So, as we are kind of coming to a close, do you have one key piece of advice that, as key pairs are starting to become aware that they are a key pair and that they are that working on the relationship, developing that relationship, recognizing strengths, weaknesses, et cetera. What is a good maybe next step that these individuals can maybe have a conversation or do something together to kind of start to bring those things into light?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ricky. I would say that my piece of advice would be, especially, I was going to say, even if you work together a long time, especially if you've worked together a long time, where you think decide not to know for a minute and ask a question instead. I think we're on the same page. I think we have the same vision. I think we have the same mission and goals. I think I know what they're really good at. I think they know what I'm really good at. I think I know what they value. I think I know what I do that really annoys them, but we've talked about how I mitigate it, etc. Even if you think you know, it is always worth asking again. Sometimes I've heard from other people this can be the case. How does that impact our relationship? What would be helpful for me to keep an eye on or change? An open-ended question about a topic that you maybe talked about previously is always worth asking and revisiting. And that's because we are not static beings. Our perspectives aren't static either. And half the time, we tried really hard to communicate, but we actually didn't get to the level of shared understanding that we did think we did. And so circling back can add value in a lot of different ways to our relationship. So that would be my advice. Where you think you already know, choose not to know and ask one more question.
Very cool. Where can people find more about the work that you and Dan are doing?
We are on online, www.leadingx2.com, or feel free to shoot us an email. We're very relational people, hence the work that we're in. So even better than looking at our website, we'd love to just talk to folks. And so you can either find me on LinkedIn, Laura Andersen, or you can shoot me an email, Laura@leadingx2.com.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.